The alarm in my chest went off before the alarm on the wall did. I felt the pressure on my sleeve first, small teeth locking through the fabric, sharp enough to prick but not break skin. Then I heard the room go silent, the kind of silence that feels heavier than screaming. Every alien in that hall turned to look at me at the same moment, and every single one of them looked terrified. Not for the cub, for me. I was on Velkara Station, 3 months into a translator posting nobody else wanted, standing in a reception hall full of Dravith officials in ceremonial robes, when their youngest, a cub barely the size of a large dog, had bolted from its mother's side, crossed the floor in 2 bounding leaps, and clamped its jaws around my sleeve like it was trying to win a prize. The Dravith are not a species people mess with. 4-clawed limbs, retractable teeth, reflexes that make human sprinters look like they are standing still. Every other species in this sector treats them the way you would treat a loaded weapon left on a table. And apparently, humans are treated the exact same way, except worse, because nobody actually knows what we do when threatened. We are the mystery predator, the one every database has a warning label on and no real data inside it. So when a Dravith cub bit a human, in public, in front of half the diplomatic wing, I understood exactly why 3 security officers reached for their sidearms at the same time. I did not reach for anything. I looked down at the cub. Its ears were flat back, its whole body trembling, but its eyes were not angry. They were wide and a little wild, the way a puppy looks, right before it either runs or plays. I had grown up on a farm outside a small town, with 2 dogs that used to do exactly this, to my little brother's jacket sleeves, every single evening, and I recognized the posture instantly. This was not an attack. This was a dare. So I smiled, and I tugged back. Gently, just enough to test. The cub's eyes went wide with something that was definitely not fear anymore. It planted its back legs, dug in, and pulled harder, a low, playful growl rattling out of its throat. I laughed, actually laughed, right there in front of the frozen crowd, and gave the sleeve another gentle pull. "Do not," said a voice behind me, tight with panic. "Do not provoke it further." That was Advisor Renholt, one of the 2 humans assigned to the station with me, standing near the wall with his hand halfway raised, like he wanted to physically pull me back by the collar. His face had gone pale. "I'm not provoking it," I said, still smiling, still gently pulling. "I'm playing with it. That is a Dravith juvenile, Elena. Its jaw pressure at full maturity can crack Durasteel. It's not full maturity, it's a baby." I glanced down. The cub had both front paws braced on the floor now, tail low and swishing hard, completely engrossed in our little tug of war. And it's having the time of its life. Somewhere behind Renholt, a Dravith security officer had gone rigid, claws extended, watching me with an expression I could only describe as horrified confusion. His weapon was drawn but not raised, like his instincts and his training were fighting each other in real time. The mother pushed through the crowd a second later. She was tall, even by Dravith standards, dressed in deep violet robes that marked her as part of the ruling council, and the look on her face when she saw her cub's teeth in my sleeve was not anger. It was dread, pure, immediate dread, the look of a parent who believes they are about to watch something terrible happen to their child. "Release," she said to the cub, her voice sharp and commanding. The cub did not release. The cub tugged harder, delighted, thinking this was now a bigger game with more players. "I am so sorry," the mother said to me, stepping closer with both hands raised in what I now knew was a gesture of surrender among her people. "He has never behaved this way. He will be restrained immediately, and if you require medical attention, or compensation, or—" "I'm fine," I said, and to prove it, I gave the sleeve one more tug, letting the cub win a little, letting him drag it half a step toward himself with a triumphant little snarl. "Honestly, he's not hurting me. Look." I held up my other hand, showing no injury, no blood, nothing but a slightly stretched sleeve of fabric. The mother stared at me like I had just spoken backwards. He bit you. He play bit me, I said. There's a difference. Dogs do this, cats do this, kids do this with their teeth before they learn better manners. He's not trying to hurt me. He's testing me, seeing if I'll run or if I'll play. Your species does this. It wasn't quite a question. All the time. The room was still frozen. Dozens of Dravith officials watching this exchange like they were witnessing a controlled detonation that had somehow failed to detonate. The security officer still hadn't lowered his weapon fully. I could feel the tension in the air like static before a storm, thick enough that I half expected someone to faint. So I did the only thing I could think of. I sat down. Right there on the polished floor of the reception hall, in front of the entire Dravith Diplomatic Council, I sat down cross-legged, sleeve still caught in the cub's mouth, and I let him pull me half a foot across the tile with a happy little roar. "Oh, come on," I said to him, grinning. "Is that all you've got?" The cub let go of my sleeve, startled by the sudden change in position. And then, before anyone could react, he pounced directly into my lap. Someone in the crowd gasped audibly. I heard at least 2 more weapons click into ready position. I caught him without thinking, the way you catch a bounding puppy, and scratched behind the ridge of his skull where I guessed the sensitive spot might be, based purely on instinct. The cub went utterly boneless in my arms, let out a long rattling sound that I would later learn was the Dravith equivalent of a purr, and flopped sideways across my knees like he owned them. The room did not relax. If anything, it got tenser. The mother took 1 step forward, then stopped herself, staring at her cub sprawled contentedly across a human's lap, like this was some kind of optical illusion her brain refused to process. "He is," she said slowly, "completely calm." "He was never not calm," I said, still scratching behind his skull ridge. "He was playing. You all just heard bite and panicked, same as I would if I saw one of your officers reach for a weapon. Our species does not play this way," she said. "A bite is a bite. It is aggression, or it is dominance, or it is a warning. It is never simply a game." "Then maybe that's the difference between us," I said. "Where I come from, teeth aren't always a threat. Sometimes they're just a kid figuring out how the world works." The security officer finally, slowly, lowered his weapon. I watched the tension drain out of his shoulders in stages, like he genuinely hadn't known how to process what he was seeing, until his body simply gave up trying. The mother crouched down in front of me, robes pooling on the floor, and looked at her cub with an expression I could only call wonder. "He has bitten 3 council aides this month," she admitted quietly. "Each time, he was punished, confined. We believed he was becoming violent, unstable. There was talk of behavioral correction protocols." My stomach dropped a little at that. "He's not unstable. He's a baby who wants to play, and nobody's been playing back." She looked up at me sharply. "You correct him with punishment for something that is not actually wrong," I continued, careful with my words now, because this mattered more than I first realized. "He bites, everyone recoils in fear, he gets isolated, and all he learns is that trying to connect with someone ends in being alone. That's not going to fix the behavior. That's going to make it worse, or turn it into something that actually is aggression, eventually, out of frustration." The hall was so quiet now, I could hear the faint hum of the station's ventilation system. The mother reached out, slowly, and placed 1 clawed hand near her cub's head, not touching him, just close, watching how he leaned instinctively into my hand, instead of flinching from hers. Something in her face cracked open, some old certainty breaking apart and reforming into a question she hadn't let herself ask before. "Show me," she said. "Show you what?" "How you play. How this is done." She looked almost embarrassed to ask it, this powerful woman in violet robes, council member of a species that made half the sector nervous, asking a lowly human translator how to play with her own child. We are not taught this. We are taught control, correction, discipline. We are never taught this. So I did. I spent the next 20 minutes on the floor of that grand reception hall, teaching a Dravith council member and her cub how to play tug of war properly, how to read the difference between a warning growl and an excited one, how a gentle nip and a real bite feel completely different if you just pay attention instead of reacting in fear. The security officers slowly holstered their weapons. The crowd slowly stopped holding its breath. Reinhold, still pale, eventually sat down in a nearby chair and simply watched, shaking his head slowly like he couldn't quite believe what his own species was capable of turning a crisis into. By the end of it, the cub was asleep against my leg, sleeve still faintly damp from earlier, one small paw resting possessively over my ankle like he'd already decided I belonged to him now. The mother watched him sleep for a long moment before speaking again. "You are not what the reports say humans are," she said quietly. "No," I agreed, brushing a hand gently over the cub's ear. "We rarely are." She didn't say anything else for a while. She just sat there beside me, on the floor of her own grand hall, watching her child sleep peacefully for what she later told me was the first time in weeks. And somewhere in that silence, something between our two species shifted just slightly, the way trust always does, quietly, without anyone announcing it, one small, ordinary act of gentleness at a time.